My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are once again talking about brats. We have been chatting about this a lot lately on my channel, whether that be the stigma around brats or how bratting can be used as a veil for non-consensual behavior, even bratty tops and bratty doms. But there has been one thing that is very obviously missing from this conversation. The people on the other side of the slash, those that play with brats themselves, the Brat Tamers. And depending on who you ask, Brat Tamers are either everyone in a local scene or as rare as hen's teeth. But no matter how uncommon or common they actually are, there is very little information out there about how to actually do that role. So today I would like to attempt to help solve that problem by talking about what a Brat Tamer is, how you can start to be one, go over some solutions for common pitfalls and issues, and hopefully just in general answer some of your questions. Now, first of all, I think to understand what it means to be a Brat Tamer, we need to understand what a brat is. Now, I realize that for people watching this video, you could be anywhere on the experience spectrum. You could be someone who's been doing BDSM for 15 years and really just wants to only hear my opinion, and you already know everything else I'm going to talk about. Or you could be someone that is brand new to BDSM and literally just had a partner drop the term brat on your lap, like you would know what that was and you have no idea where to start. So let us understand what bratting is so we can all be on equal footing going into this conversation. Now, I have talked about this quite a lot recently, though not super in depth. So today's going to be like the super in-depth analysis of the brat psyche. Hey everyone, this is Evie again. So really quickly, I'm just going to interrupt the video because I want to share with you all something I'm really excited about. So I'm working on a project called the Kink Bundle, which is a bundle of 16 different educational resources from classes to workbooks and journal prompts. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because this bundle is only available until August 23rd, so I want to make sure you don't miss out on it. It's over $1,000 worth of educational content. There are so many interesting subjects like DDLG and self-tying and navigating punishment and discipline, and I also have my own contribution, which is an exclusive anal sex and anal training workshop that you won't be able to find anywhere else. It's only in this bundle until August 23rd. After that, it's gone, so make sure you check it out. A link will be in the description. The main way that I understand bratting is as a consensual BDSM dynamic where one partner, usually but not always the submissive or bottom, enjoys acting out in order to get a reaction. That could be with teasing, talking back, rolling eyes, acting sassy, just in some way egging on their partner to do something to them. One of the most typical forms of bratting, especially in a power exchange relationship, would be rule breaking. For example, if you have a power exchange relationship where you have a rule that your submissive is supposed to wear whatever you lay out for them in the morning, and then you see them walking around the house wearing something totally different, and they have taken all the clothes you put out for them on the bed and put them on the floor, shoved them in the hallway, whatever, that might be a case of bratting. Now, the motivations behind bratting are pretty varied. I think one of the main ones would be a sense of security and comfort. This is when the acting out is sort of a way to be reassured that even when you break rules, even when you push at things, the partner that you're with is not going to abandon you. They are going to stay with you and correct you and have the ability to correct you and put you on the right path. It's about being reassured of the boundaries in the relationship, knowing that your partner is invested and there with you even when you do act out, and they are able to and they want to put that energy into maintaining that relationship dynamic. It can also be about having a clear narrative reason for engaging in sadomasochistic activities. For some people, they are okay with just pain for pain's sake. They're like, yeah, I'm into pain, whatever, who cares? Other people need more help or want more context for engaging in that kind of play. They like having a reason behind what's going on. And so with a bratting dynamic, you know, okay, I'm getting spanked right now because I poured glitter on the floor. I am getting caned because I rolled my eyes at dinner. Like, you know exactly A thing that I did caused B thing to happen. It makes everything very clear and puts the scene in a nice context. Now, this is not to say that all brats are masochists. A lot of them are, but not all of them. So you shouldn't make the assumption that the reason the person is bratting is because they want to have that narrative. It's just one of the possibilities. It can also be about the fact that a lot of people feel stifled by like the strictness and the rigidity of a lot of like more so-called formal BDSM, and they like being able to play around and be irreverent. They really embrace taking on that kind of like Joker role almost. Now, some people have a lot of problem with this for some reason. Like, they go, oh, well, BDSM is serious and it should be a serious thing, and if you're not treating it with the proper respect it deserves, then you're causing harm to our community. And just like, no. Like, yes, you can do serious BDSM, but intimacy can also be in general about having fun, play fighting, teasing, role play, imagination. That can be part of vanilla intimacy and expressing that intimacy, and that can also be the case in BDSM. And that can happen in multiple different ways in BDSM even, not just through bratting. Bratting is one potential expression of that. So I don't want to limit people. I don't want to say, oh, you have to be super, super serious. Like, be serious if you want. Don't be serious if you don't want to be. Anyways, I'm ranting. I will get off of that soapbox and get back into the point, which is that bratting can be for very many reasons, and just because someone is bratting doesn't mean they are harming the community or damaging community values in some way. So with all that being said, I hope you now have a better understanding of where the opposite side of the slash is coming from. It's not about just trying to get away with being rude, and someone that's acting like a brat is not a fake submissive. So then, what is a brat tamer? A brat tamer is the brat's natural counterpart. I thought in my head for a minute they're natural like enemy, natural predator, and maybe some people think of it that way. Let me know what you think about that in a comment down below. But they are basically the water to a brat's fire. They are there to keep them in line. Now, not everyone that plays with brats identifies as a brat tamer, but when that is part of the role titles that they use, a brat tamer is really there to steer a brat in the more correct direction. Some people do this with what I would call an annoying amount of patience. Like, just nothing the brat does can really ever faze them, or at least they never show it. By the way, this drives brats crazy most of the time. It can also be about having more of a disciplinarian approach, where they always have a firm hand, cane, a paddle somewhere close by to be physically correcting their bratty submissive partner. And one of the most common ways is just to out-brat the brat. And if you want to learn more about that way of brat taming, I do talk about it extensively in my recent video on bratty tops and bratty doms, which will be linked down below. Now, why would someone want to be a brat tamer? I pose this rhetorical question because a lot of people do scoff at the idea of playing with a brat. Why would you want to play with a submissive that doesn't even really want to be submissive? You know, things like that. That is like, oh, well, I just need someone that's going to be perfectly obedient at all times. And that's great. You know what? If you don't want to play with brats, don't play with brats. If you want someone that's going to kneel the first hour of meeting you and be a perfect submissive that never does or says anything back ever, great. Okay, play with people like that. But just because some doms don't want to play with brats doesn't mean that no dom or no top would ever want to play with brats. I think it's really important in the community. I'm just kind of bring this up now because I think it's really important. Is when you see other people's way of doing BDSM, even if it doesn't make sense to you, please don't make fun of it. Please don't be like, that doesn't make any sense. Real doms don't do this. Real subs don't do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, there are so many approaches to kink. I don't think it really serves us to go around judging other people for the dynamics that they are consensually engaging in and get enjoyment from. So, how does a brat tamer enjoy taming brats? I think one of the things I've seen a lot of demonstration of personally is how brats can give doms a lot of energy because there is this very clear back and forth sort of play fighting, teasing energy. You really know as a dom, as a top, that your partner wants to be there and is actively engaging with you. Oh, they're still being sassy. I guess that means they still want to be hit more. You know, things along that frame of mind where it is very obvious, okay, they're really into this, they want me to do this, and I really like chasing them. It can also be about, kind of along the lines of chasing, it can be about sort of being invited to be more dominant, be more toppy. Like, oh, I'm being challenged and I like being challenged. I like being able to rise to the occasion and prove how domly and strong and authoritative I actually am. And thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to demonstrate why it is that I am the dom in this relationship. Knowing there's going to be a struggle to get there and prove that can make the victory all the more sweeter, even when you know the victory is kind of inevitable. Just like with masochists, for sadists that are also doms and tops, playing with a brat does offer a very clear narrative framework. It's like, oh, okay, well, they deserve to be punished because they stuck out their tongue at me, or they need to be disciplined because they broke a rule. Especially for sadists, I think even more so than masochists, having that reason for doing something makes processing your enjoyment of BDSM much, much easier, because otherwise it's like, I'm hitting someone and they say they like it, I guess, but this feels wrong because hitting people is bad because that was the messaging I got my whole life. When suddenly, if someone is doing something on purpose to provoke you, then it seems more justified. It seems like, oh, I'm getting payback. I'm getting revenge. I'm putting them in line. They need me to put them back on the right course and correct them. And also, this kind of play allows the brat tamer leeway to act silly or even capricious themselves. They get to tease right back. They get to give wet willies and pin their partner to the floor until they cry uncle, whatever's necessary to gain back control and to assert authority, obviously within consented to guidelines and all of that business. But how many of us in our adult lives really have the space to have that kind of fun and roughhousing? I don't think many of us do. And so brat taming gives us that space to be able to engage and play that way that we don't normally get to. Of course, I am sure there are more ways to enjoy being a brat or taming brats than I have mentioned here today. So if you feel like I am missing anything big or important, feel free to leave your ideas and thoughts in a comment down below. But with that being said, now that we understand the reasons behind something and more of the motivations, let's get into how to actually be a brat tamer. Now, especially if you are newer to BDSM in general or new to the left side of the slash, I would be cautious about playing with brats. Playing with brats can feel really intimidating for a lot of people because there's this very direct, sometimes continual challenge to your authority, to your ability level, to your skills when you are around brats. And though that can be something that feeds people, that can be really fun to play with, it can quickly go in a more negative direction. And when you don't have a higher level of skill, when you don't feel as confident in those skills, when you're still trying to figure things out, having a partner tell you, like, oh, that was terrible, is that what you call a spanking? That goes from being like a fun, motivating thing to a demoralizing thing where you start questioning if you even should be a top anymore. I actually think, strangely enough, that bratting and humiliation are kind of similar in this way, because in humiliation, you have to be very, very clear about where are the okay things to go after and what things should never, ever, ever be touched, right? Some people are totally okay with humiliation around how their body looks. Other people, that would be like a hard no, never, read instantly. So it's all very subtle, and it involves needing to have a level of pre-existing knowledge and confidence and skill in order to be able to do that well without causing accidental harm. Poking and prodding at your partner is all fun and games until you accidentally knock over a load-bearing self-esteem wall and they never want to play with you or anyone ever again. So if you're a brat, be careful with newer doms and tops and throwing out things like, oh my god, this is like so boring. Because for some people, that's going to be fun and funny, and for other people, it's going to be pretty hurtful. Which brings me to the first important point about being a brat tamer, which is having really strong, clear boundaries and limitations. A lot of people think that boundaries are just for submissives and bottoms because if submissives didn't have them, every top would do literally anything they wanted, and it's kind of like a messed up way of thinking about tops. But anyways, people that are tops and doms are also allowed to have boundaries. It is an important part of any BDSM relationship, but especially when it comes to bratting. It's important to talk to a potential partner about what kinds of bratting you're okay with, like verbal bratting, physical bratting, playing pranks, and also when you're okay with bratting, such as texting beforehand but not in person, during the scenes is fine but not elsewhere in our relationship, or only when you can immediately correct them. So that means no bratting in the middle of the grocery store. I'm sorry. And while we're at it, remember that tops and doms can also use safe words. People tend not to do this, and they tend to more go towards winding down the scene and wrapping up more quickly versus just saying red and taking someone out of a scene space entirely, but it is an option. And you can also use things like the traffic light system, red, yellow, and green, to communicate when something is touching on a sensitive spot, but doesn't necessarily mean you want the scene to end right then and there. Remember that whenever you're working on a new dynamic, it's going to take time to figure out your own flow, figure out what you want that relationship to look like, what you actually feel comfortable with doing and hearing and everything else. So don't be afraid to use those tools that are available to you to help that process be a little bit easier. Even if you don't use a safe word, communicating if the bratting is going too hard or happening too often is still important. Fine-tuning and talking about that stuff is all part of developing a relationship like this. Now, speaking of communication, brat communication is notoriously opaque. Are they acting out right now because they want a spanking, or do they actually hate me? Is something wrong, or are they just joking? They're struggling a lot right now. Do they really want this, or what's happening here? Thoughts like this, I am sure, have ran through Brat Tamer's heads a million times. And sometimes the ambiguity can be part of the fun. Part of the role play behind bratting is asking for something to happen without directly asking for it. But as a top, as a dominant, it can be very difficult to deal with the confusion over does this partner actually want me to do this? Is what is happening right now actually consensual? And I think there are ways to check in and establish that without ruining the fun of the scene. Asking quick, clarifying questions like, hey, do you still want this? Or is anything wrong? Or hey, are you still good? Those can be, I think, a good way of non-obtrusively checking in without fully taking away from the scene experience while still giving you, as the dom or top, peace of mind. Now, earlier I did also mention the stoplight system of green, yellow, and red. I really recommend using that, especially when you are newer on in a dynamic, to get a good sense of when you might be going too far or not. And that yellow can be a good way to check in and see, hey, we are getting close to going too far, but we're not actually there yet. So don't feel afraid to use that. I think a lot of people do. It's really helpful, and it's going to help you feel more comfortable with playing harder and going for longer, because there's kind of that double fail-safe system in place. Now, as you get more experience, as you gain more of a sense of comfort, kind of get a rhythm going with each other, this kind of level of check-in, I think, becomes less necessary, though it can still be a good idea. But at the beginning, I think it is especially useful. I also recommend giving your partner tools to be able to communicate when they're trying to brat or not. So for example, maybe they might call you by your name or by a title like sir or master in kind of your everyday relationship when they're not bratting, and then when they are bratting, they call you daddy. And that's the only time they call you daddy, is when they are trying to brat. Maybe you have them use certain emojis, like if they send you 4 devil emojis, that means they're trying to brat. Or maybe if you live together, you have a fridge magnet that has like a green to red meter on it, and the closer to red they are, the more likely they are to feel like bratting on that particular day. Tons of options to be able to sort of indirectly, but I think still clearly communicate the likelihood that bratting is happening without taking away from the experience. If you're developing a power exchange relationship, having distinct guidelines and rules is very important. Most of the people I know that have brats that are in power exchange relationships have kind of a tiered rule system. So they have like an upper tier of rules that are like the more important core rules. These are the ones that should not be bratted around and should not be broken and are very serious. This would be things like the submissive will always be truthful with the dominant. Not fair game for bratting there. Then they have lesser secondary rules that are more open to be bratted around. So this could be things like the submissive will ask permission before shaving, or the submissive will brush their teeth twice a day. Breaking these rules is what creates the opportunity for bratting and for correction, which is what people in relationships like this are usually after. Now, if the rule is being broken every single day, that for me is when it goes from bratting on purpose territory to I don't like this rule territory. So it's important to check in and evaluate, hey, are we not doing this because we want attention every day? Or are we not doing this because we don't like the rule and it's not serving the relationship? Because at some point, if the rule is being broken over and over and over and over again, I think it's time to reconsider if you want to have that rule there in the first place. Because as a dominant, if you are always having to actively correct every single day the exact same rule and nothing is changing that can really start to wear you down. Now, some people are more okay with having rules being broken, especially the lesser ones, and they're kind of like, yeah, it's an everyday thing, it's part of the fun, we like it. Other people, they want it to be used more sparingly, and they don't want to have to be in this place of constant correction. So be sure to think about how you feel about that and how you would want to set up rules and what the expectations are for breaking rules leading to correction. Now, this brings us to what is probably the number one most common pitfall in bratting relationships: punishments. Because I know y'all are probably saying to yourselves right now, Evie, you are telling me to correct and to punish my bratty partner, but when I do it, it just makes them do the thing more. And this is where we get into a really important distinction between punishment and punishment. So punishment is fun punishment. It is play punishment. It's what you do when you are kind of having a little bit more of like a role play, I've been a naughty boy kind of an approach, where it's not really about correcting behavior going forward. It's just about having fun and kind of getting your energy out. It's not really meant to serve, like actually contributing to the DS relationship, and it's not meant to deter future unwanted behavior. Whereas with actual punishment, the point of the punishment is to correct behavior such that it deters the person from wanting to do it again. And a lot of people, for some reason, don't think about this, but because a lot of brats are masochists, if you physically punish them, it's not actually a punishment. So if you want them to actually stop doing the thing or obey the rule or whatever, you have to do things they don't like. I do have a whole entire video where I've gone over non-physical ideas for punishment, which you guys can find down below, because there are lots of ways to non-physically punish someone. That could be writing lines, that could be having them scrub the bathroom floor on hands and knees with a toothbrush, that could be taking away their social media time. Lots and lots of options out there. Now, it might also just be as simple as giving them pain they don't like. There are some people that like any kind of pain. Paddles, whips, canes, heavy, thuddy, light, stingy, whatever. They don't care if it's pain, it's pain, it's pain. They like all of it. Then you need to stick with the non-physical punishments. But for a lot of people, they have a very strong preference for certain things. They might love over-the-knee spankings and hate whips. And so you would want to keep whips as like the punishment tool. That's what's going to be used to correct the behavior. I do advise caution there because I personally don't like associating BDSM tools with like unfun pain and suffering, especially if you do want to use them in fun scenes later. But that's going to be up to you and your personal relationship. That's just my own 2 cents, having done that in past relationships. Having negative mental associations with certain areas of BDSM because of punishment is not fun, and I don't think is what most people are looking for. Also, remember that a brat could be looking for punishment at certain times and punishment at others, and act the same way. So you're going to need to also work out and set up parameters for being able to figure out, hey, do we want this thing or do we want that thing? And knowing what to do to get to the desired state and have the desired outcome. Then there's times when your bratting partner might go too far. Maybe they teased you the way your middle school bully did. Maybe they said something that brought up a past trauma. Maybe everything's been mostly fine, but it's more of a domino effect where it was a bunch of little things that suddenly became not okay because bundled together they became one really big thing. And I think the tendency is to encourage doms and tops to like kind of push that down and bury it and deal with it on their own and power through it because they're the dom, they have control, who cares, right? They should be able to figure it out on their own if they are equipped to be a dom. But I really think you should bring that up with your partner. Most brats, if they are good ethical brats, do not want to actually mentally or emotionally cause harm to their partners. They are doing it to get their own needs met, but they typically don't want to like destroy other people in the process. So if something is said or happens that makes you feel uncomfortable, you should be able to talk about it and say, hey, you know, I really like the scene we did earlier, but when you said this, it made me uncomfortable. Can we stay away from that in the future? And they should understand and they should be willing to accept that you as a dom or a top have your own boundaries. And I think a lot of brats actually deep down want to do good. They want to do the right thing. Give them the opportunity to correct their behavior. Give them the opportunity to make amends for their mistake in a genuine way so that we both of you can start to rebuild those bonds in the relationship that maybe got broken or damaged. That could be through having them write you a genuine, heartfelt apology letter, or maybe having a brat-free relaxation day at your house where they wait on you hand and foot. But also be sure at the end of that to set up parameters and expectations so that transgression doesn't happen again. Ultimately, though, all of this depends on one very important thing: communicating with your partner. I know, I just ended on the revolutionary note that you need to talk to people when you do BDSM with them. But really, though, that is ultimately the answer. I can tell you what is typical. I can tell you what the average is. I can tell you what happens based on my observations and experience, what I have learned in classes, but I cannot tell you about your relationship. I cannot tell you what your partner wants, what their motivations are, what their limits are, what punishments they like and dislike. I cannot tell you what you are going to love about being a brat tamer, or what your boundaries are, or what it is that you want to do for a long-term relationship. I don't know. There's a million possibilities, right? So ultimately, only you and your partner are going to know what is best for your own unique individual dynamic. These are just my suggestions, my ideas, and of course, I'm sure there are many things that I didn't even cover today that you probably think are really important for brat taming. And in that case, if you have anything else to add about brat taming, any questions, comments, anything else, feel free to let me know in a comment down below. And finally, because this is the end of the video, if you have not already and you want to make sure to not miss out on any of my other videos, please go ahead and subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related subjects. And finally, if you really enjoyed this, if you want to support what I do, you can go over to my Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.